Get into what he had to say here. The article says his former Nuggets coach George Karl continued his trademark criticism of the Los Angeles Lakers on social media last night, launching a series of tweets against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the historic franchise. Tired of the constant media takes on the Cowboys and the Lakers, both organizations are barely relevant. They get so much coverage because they are highly valued with large fan bases, not because they are championship contending teams! Exclamation.
But then Karl took it to a whole new level, targeting LeBron James and Kevin Durant directly. It was one of the most savage call-outs we have seen on the hardwood in ages, and the internet absolutely lost its mind. The Hall of Famer pulled zero punches. He basically claimed this generation of stars would get eaten alive back in his day. Not a single one would make it. But that is just the surface-level stuff. Here is where the story goes off the rails. The drama actually started because LeBron and KD were caught on a hot mic roasting Karl at a private gig back in early 2025. So, what did they actually say behind closed doors? And why did Karl finally snap and unload online? How did two of the biggest legends in the sport react when the guy who coached tough-as-nails dudes like Gary Payton and Carmelo Anthony calls them too soft for real basketball?
I think most people know that today's player is totally different than the player I started coaching in the 70s and 80s. The game has become entertainment and business more than going to the gym and kicking somebody's butt and enjoying competition. And the spirit of the game, I think, has really changed a great deal. And along with our society,
we are talking the elite of the elite athletes, legendary coaches, insiders, all in one room. Usually, these mixers are low-key. No paparazzi, no headlines, just folks talking shop offline. But security messed up big time. A recording device was left running during a break between speeches. LeBron James and Kevin Durant were chatting, thinking nobody was listening. The audio quality is grainy, but you can hear every word. They are cracking jokes about old-school coaches. And suddenly, George Karl's name gets dropped. One of them laughs about how Karl's playbook wouldn't stand a chance in the modern Bachelor of Arts. The other makes a crack about how defense back then was just guys fouling each other and getting away with it. Then comes the kicker. They both start laughing when Karl gets painted as a dinosaur, a guy who can't handle that the sport evolved without him. It was brutal, straight mockery, with no filter. Within hours, that file hits Twitter. It was not dropped by ESPN or Bleacher Report either. Just some random user with about 3,000 followers who happened to be in the right spot. Once it hit the timeline, it was over. The clip went nuclear. Retweets, quote tweets, reaction videos, the basketball community split into factions instantly. The stands immediately defended LeBron and KD, claiming it was just locker room talk and that everyone speaks like that in private. But the OG fans, they were furious. People started commenting stuff like, "These guys have never seen a hand check in their lives and want to run their mouths about George Karl." Another user posted, "Karl coached when you could basically punch a guy and the ref would tell you to keep playing." We are talking millions of views in less than 24 hours. The major sports networks are scrambling to cover it. But the weirdest part? Complete radio silence from the King and KD, no tweets, no stories, nothing. George Karl, however, is watching. He hears the disrespect, and there was no way he was going to let his legacy get dragged without firing back. But to get why he was so mad, you need context.
Pretty well dominating. They're committed to it, I guess is the best way to phrase it. But I think coaches that want to play fast, players, it's easy to get a buy-in on it. And the whole thing, again, is what I think in today's game, there's limited time. So as a coach, we got to communicate better to the time that we have them. And so
he managed teams through the brutal physicality of the 90s and early 2000s, back when a flagrant foul was just considered strategy. His squads were gritty. They were dogs. We are talking Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Melo. These guys were not delicate. They thrived under Karl because he demanded a level of mental toughness and discipline that forced you to get back up when you got knocked down. So when Karl hears LeBron and KD giggling about his legacy and acting like his achievements are dusty relics, he took it personally. 48 hours later, Karl sends the first jab, a simple tweet. He writes, "Funny how the loudest voices are the ones who never bled for this sport. Come talk to me when you get through a playoff run without load management." It was surgical. Bled for the game was a clear shot at modern rest culture. And that load management comment, that was a missile aimed right at LeBron and KD, sitting out regular season games. The analysts started buzzing immediately. Was Karl going to escalate this? Everyone waited for a response. Will KD clap back? The tension was thick. 3 days later, Karl goes all in. No cryptic tweets this time, he drops a full-blown statement on Instagram. It was basically a declaration of war aimed at the superstars. Karl writes, "I have stayed quiet while the game changed. I watched the rules get softer. I have watched stars get treated like they are made of glass. I kept my mouth shut out of respect for the evolution of the game. But disrespect? That is where I draw the line." He keeps going. "You want to laugh at my era? You think my coaching style was a joke? Let's be real. You wouldn't last one single practice with my squads. Not one. The physical beating, the mind games, the no-excuse culture. You would fold, and deep down, you know it." He wasn't done yet. "LeBron, K, D, I respect the talent. I respect the trophies, but don't get it twisted. Winning in a soft era isn't the same as dominating a real one." He laid it all out. "My guys didn't take 20 nights off. They didn't build super teams. They didn't cry to the refs every time someone breathed on them. They played through the pain, they faced adversity, and they never disrespected the legends who paved the way." Then he dropped the hammer with the closing line. "You wouldn't survive our era." That is not an opinion. That is a fact. The basketball world didn't just react. It went into meltdown mode for days. The stars stayed silent at first, which only made the noise louder. Fans were getting restless. Was this really going to be a one-sided beatdown? Were they just going to big-time George Karl and ignore it? Finally, LeBron moves. No press conference, no interview. Instead, he posts a single Instagram story. It is a clean, high-res shot of his 4 championship rings. The caption, "Results speak louder than words." No names, no rant, but the message was heavy. LeBron is reminding everyone who sits on the throne, 4-time champion, global icon, one of the greatest to ever lace them up. The subtext was lethal because George Karl never won the big one. That was the dagger. LeBron didn't have to say it outright. Everyone picked up on it instantly. His fan base swarmed social media. One top comment blew up. "Karl can't win a ring, so he talks about surviving instead." Another said, "Bron has more finals MVPs than Karl has titles. Sit down." But the old heads weren't backing down. "Rings don't equal toughness," one user argued. Another posted, "This ring culture is exactly why the league is so soft now." Then came the brutal takes. Put LeBron against the bad boy Pistons and watch him cry to the refs in the first quarter. Then Kevin Durant enters the chat. And KD does not do subtle. He hops on Twitter and starts firing. First tweet, "Old coaches stay bitter because the game passed them by. Adapt or stay irrelevant." Minutes later, he doubles down. "We didn't mock you, George. We spoke facts. Your era had different rules. Ours is more skilled, more strategic, and way more entertaining." Then came the dagger. "Oh, and by the way, if your system was so genius, where is the jewelry to prove it? No holding back, just straight fire." KD didn't let up on the timeline either. He started smashing the like button on tweets defending his legacy. Meanwhile, LeBron uploaded a montage of modern offensive schemes, dissecting defenses with the caption, "This is hoops, not an MMA fight." That's when the online beef went thermonuclear. It stopped being about the players and morphed into a full-scale generational conflict. The younger crowd advocated for pace, spacing, and pure bag. The older heads preached the gospel of the 90s physicality, intimidation, and mental grit. Every major network from ESPN to FS1 started running 24/7 coverage on the topic. The pundits had to draw lines in the sand. Some stuck up for the superstars, citing their ridiculous talent, longevity, and resumes. Others sided with Karl, claiming the modern rulebook is essentially a red carpet for offensive players. Just when the dust seemed to settle, George Karl grabbed the mic and cranked the volume to 11. In late January 2025, Karl booked a sit-down. He ignored the big cable networks and corporate suits, opting instead for a raw, uncensored basketball podcast known for letting guests let it fly. Karl knew exactly what he was doing. This was his platform to unload the clip. The host didn't waste time. George, LeBron, and KD fired back. "What's your response?" Karl didn't even flinch. "Look, I couldn't care less about Instagram captions or Twitter fingers. That's just static," he said. "I care about reality." Then he dropped the hammer. "This league today, it's choreographed entertainment. It isn't the sport I coached. That's fine, but stop pretending it's grittier than what we went through." He kept pushing. "LeBron and KD are gifted. I never said they weren't, but they play on easy mode." Karl started ticking off the list. Charter flights are plush. Rest management is standard. Rules outlaw touching them. Then the big one. They get to handpick their rosters and stack the deck. You think my guys had that option? He leaned back and added, you think Gary Payton could just text his buddies to form a super squad? The host challenged him. But isn't the game technically more skilled now? The shooting, the handles, the creativity? Karl leaned in, eyes intense. Skill is not toughness. He didn't stutter. Sure, players today can pull up from the logo and cross people over, but drop them in a playoff series with hand checking, where hard fouls were just play on and trash talk was warfare? Then let's talk. I don't see it, Karl said flatly. I think they'd whine. I think they'd lobby for rule changes. I think they'd fold. The tension in the studio skyrocketed. Then the host asked the money question. If you coached LeBron or KD for one season in your era, what happens? Karl cracked a smile that said it all. They'd either transform into the hardest men in the league, or they'd quit by mid-season. That quote detonated instantly. Karl elaborated, my practices were dogfights. Guys battled for the alpha spot. No participation trophies. You earned your stripes by surviving. He doubled down. LeBron and KD never had to walk through that fire. And honestly, I don't think they could. The clip went global. TikToks, Reels, YouTube Shorts, you couldn't escape it. That line, they'd either become the toughest players in the league or they'd quit halfway through, became an instant meme. Sports talk shows had a field day. Some called Karl a bitter dinosaur completely out of touch. Others hailed him as the only honest man left, willing to call out the softness of the modern NBA. The noise got louder by the hour, yet LeBron and KD went dark. No tweets, no captions, no statements. The silence was heavier than any clapback they could have posted. That's when it became clear this wasn't just George Karl versus the stars anymore. This was a bigger question tearing the basketball world in two. Did the league get soft, or did it evolve? Legends picked sides immediately. Players from Karl's era publicly backed him. One former All-Star tweeted, George is 100% spot on. These divas wouldn't last a week in our paint. The physical toll would break them. Another retiree stated in an interview, we didn't have load management. You played hurt or you lost your job permanently. No filter, no gray area. But the young guns returned fire just as hard. Current All-Stars defended the King and KD. One rising prospect posted, old heads love the toughness talk. But could they guard a modern pick and roll? He kept going. Could they switch 1 through 5? Could they hit consistently from 30 feet and close out? Doubt it. Analysts swapped emotion for film study. They broke down the removal of hand checking, the stricter enforcement of flagrant fouls after 2004, and the explosion of sports science. The data told a clear story. Pace is up, scoring is up, defense hasn't vanished. It just shifted from brute force to complex schematics and anticipation. But here is the issue. Spreadsheets don't settle bar fights, and this beef is all emotion. Karl's reputation took a hit with the younger demographic. They wrote him off as a grumpy old man yelling at clouds. They hammered on one point repeatedly, 0 rings. To them, his tough guy routine sounded more like nostalgia than a blueprint for winning. They argued if his way really worked, he'd have the jewelry. But conversely, Karl turned into a folk hero for the old school. They rallied behind him as the last guardian against the coddling of superstars. To that crowd, Karl represented authenticity, a refusal to bow down to PR-polished narratives and highlight real culture. Meanwhile, the radio silence from James and Durant looked strategic. Why engage? Their legacies are cemented. Their resumes scream louder than any Twitter thread ever could. By staying quiet, they let Karl scream into the void. But the debate refused to die. Who is actually right? The uncomfortable truth is that both sides have a point. The 90s and early 2000s were undeniably a physical gauntlet. Players absorbed punishment that would result in suspensions today. The mental fortitude to survive that era was legitimate. But the modern NBA is a different monster. The spacing, the velocity, the cognitive load. Players today defend acres of space, switch across every position, and execute complex reads on every possession. That requires elite excellence. So maybe the argument isn't about who is tougher or more skilled. Maybe it's about acknowledging that greatness wears different jerseys in different decades. Good luck getting George Karl, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant to sign off on that, though. This feud is bigger than egos. It exposes a fundamental fracture in how the sport is valued. For the older generation, toughness is the currency. Playing through agony, taking the hit, never making excuses, that is what greatness looks like to them. So, when they see stars sitting out for maintenance or reacting to hard fouls, it feels like heresy. For the youth, evolution is progress. The game is faster, smarter, and prettier. Old school physicality looks like unskilled brutality, not superior basketball. And when they hear coaches romanticize an era of on-court brawls, it sounds archaic. This divide isn't limited to hoops. It's everywhere. Sports, music, corporate culture. The old guard thinks the kids are soft. The new generation thinks the elders are bitter. Neither side will concede, but they're both partially right. That's why this fire won't burn out anytime soon. George Karl's frustration is valid. So is the confidence of the superstars. And that friction is exactly why this story hit such a raw nerve. Karl coached when the game demanded a very specific breed of survivor. From his perspective, he sees that killer instinct slowly evaporating. To him, the grit, the daily hustle, and that do-or-die attitude are bleeding out of the sport he cherishes. Yet, Karl refusing to give props to the sophistication and tactical depth of the modern league makes him look like he's trapped in a time capsule. The sport didn't just get physically easier, it intellectually evolved. You can't overlook that factor. The resumes built by LeBron and Durant are ironclad. They've owned this generation, rewritten the record books, and totally changed the physics of the hardwood. Their numbers don't lie. However, when they brush off the pioneers of the game, it definitely leaves a sour taste in people's mouths. Taking jabs at a coaching legend like George Karl behind the scenes screams of ingratitude for the foundation the league stands on. So, what's the verdict? Karl isn't budging an inch. He's drawn a hard line. Today's icons have incredible bags, but to him, they're fragile and wouldn't last 5 minutes in his heyday. As for LeBron and KD, they've mentally checked out of the argument. They said their piece, subliminal or otherwise, and are moving on. But don't think this beef is squashed. The minute a star takes a maintenance day, George's critique hits a little harder. Every time a guy whines about contact, the old guard shakes their heads. Then LeBron, or KD, hangs 40 in the postseason, and their fans scream vindication. It's a rinse and repeat cycle. The headlines might cool off, but the underlying resentment isn't going anywhere. Basketball is a living thing, and growth always causes friction between the old school and the new wave. Here is the million-dollar question we need to answer. If you teleported prime LeBron and Durant back to the 90s, hand-checking, clotheslines, and absolutely zero load management, would they still run the show, or would they fold? Now flip the script. Take George's toughest enforcers and drop them into today's space and pace era with deep threes and switch-heavy defense. Are they franchise players or just bench warmers? Sound off in the comments and let's settle this. George fired the first shot. The superstars returned fire. But this is bigger than a petty feud. It's about heritage. It's about progress. And it's about defining what greatness actually looks like. If you want more deep dives into the league's wildest storylines, smash that like button, subscribe to the crew, and pass this along to someone who needs to hear it. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat, and leave your hot takes down below. Appreciate you tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.